physical life, we find ourselves in the womb of our mother. And we are connected to our mother with the umbilical cord. And biochemically, we're one with the mother. It's like one body with two heartbeats, with two brains, but one body, deeply connected. And often in unity. And then we get born. And the umbilical cord gets cut. And the physical connection at that moment with the mother, the oneness, the biochemical connection gets lost. And then a whole process starts of reconnecting, a refinement. You know, one of the things is we are hopefully laid on the intimacy of our mother's belly, or in touch with the intimacy of the mother's body. And we sniff. And we touch with our hands softly the skin. And we look up. And we look into the eyes of the mother, and there is a reconnection taking place, a reconnection through the senses. A refinement of the connection which was there. We taste the mother, we smell the mother, we see the mother, and we hear the mother's voice, which we recognize. Because we heard the mother's voice also inside the womb, but differently. So, at the same time, in growing up, we become aware, after a couple of years, that we are a separate I. That we are not the same. And again, a distance is taking place where very much there was, not an I. And that means that we are in pure awareness. And through the senses, we are connected with our environment as one. But the moment we realize that we have an I, then what's happening is that we also become aware that there is a you. And again, there is this separation, the separation of identity, the separation of the formation or the forming of an ego, maybe, a personality. And still, it takes years and years and years and years before we realize that another person is not thinking exactly the same as we are, is not perceiving exactly the same as we are. Is not experiencing the same as we are. It's different. But long before that we realize this, in this whole process of separation and reconnecting and separation and connecting and separation and connecting, we start to experience loneliness. Isolation. And partly because we feel that we are different. That we don't belong. So many of us, when we're growing up and we're little children, we ask ourselves, is this really my family? Or is maybe, my mother found me or got me or I'm adopted? Because we don't really feel that we totally belong in this family. So in a way, we feel isolated, or we have the feeling that we're the black sheep. And then in such a position, we still kind of work hard and try to find back the connection, because this connection is so important. It's a lifeline. It's a lifeline as the umbilical cord is a lifeline. We're social animals. We need to feel that we are connected. So we invest in it. We adjust. And sometimes in this whole process of adjustment on our environment, we lose the connection with ourselves. We adjust so strongly, trying to fulfill what the outer authority, our teachers, are wanting from us, that we start to disconnect a little bit with ourselves, a little bit more with ourselves, a little bit more. We start to disconnect with our emotions, and through our emotions with our physical body. It's not too good to be angry, so we disconnect from anger. It's better not to be angry. It's too much when you're sad. Maybe our love is not good enough because it doesn't make our mother as happy as we should expect. We don't really understand how another person is thinking and the judgments which are there. So we grow up in a conditional world, and we start to adjust to the conditions around ourselves. Never be bad, never betray, never lie, or lie a lot. And these conditions, all these conditions, in a way, are separations when you look at it. It is a separation from the unconditional part of ourselves. And slowly, what is growing in us is more and more insecurity, sometimes social fears. Not really have the feeling of belonging anymore, and feel disconnected from our environment and disconnected from ourselves. And at the same time, loneliness is born. The kind of loneliness which is connected with the feeling of isolation. Like a pit. And loneliness as a feeling is quite unbearable. And the more conditional connection becomes, the more lonely we start to feel. And it's not only that the outer authority is putting conditions on how we can connect and when we are connected, but we start to put conditions upon ourselves as well. We cannot connect when we are insecure. We cannot connect when we don't feel good, when we don't feel happy. We cannot connect when we are angry. We cannot connect when we are sad. We cannot connect when we are depressed or down, because then we bother other people. It's too much. So we start to place a lot of conditions on our own ability to connect. And at the same time, this loneliness is quite unbearable, and we cannot connect when we feel lonely. This is the biggest one. So when we are lonely, we need to isolate ourselves, because who is waiting for a lonely friend? And at the same time, we are longing for intimacy, togetherness. And then a miracle is happening. Two lonely people are meeting each other. They're not really lonely because they're meeting each other. And there is a connection. And there is intimacy. And this intimacy helps not to feel the loneliness. Either we're intimate or we're lonely. So often we lost so much connection with connection and contact with connection that it's either intimacy or loneliness. We're in a duality. So we have to be intimate all the time not to feel lonely. And when there is no intimacy, we feel lonely. And we start to blame the other that we feel lonely. The other should take care that we don't feel so lonely. The other should be there for us. The other should make us feel better. And we feel responsible for the loneliness of the other. So we should work hard, not let the other person feel lonely, not to let your partner feel lonely. And there's this whole dance to overcome loneliness. And it's important to realize that there is a difference between loneliness and being alone. So what's the difference between loneliness and being alone? So when we are lonely, we don't feel connected. We are losing connection. There is this sense of isolation, not being part of. When we are lonely in a forest, we feel lost, not connected, often fearful, out of place. When we are alone, the realization partly of that we are separate, different, unique in how we are built. Have our own mind, our own experience, our own feelings, emotions. When we are alone, we feel connected. When we are alone in the forest, we feel the trees. We hear the birds. We smell the scent of the forest. We feel part of the forest. We feel the peacefulness which is there. We are connected. So we don't really need company. We don't really need another person to be connected. And sometimes it's even when there is not another person around, we can connect more deeply. Because sometimes people are, in our eyes, interfering with the depth we can connect with nature, with our dog. And often this is because we give the other person authority. And we project judgment on the other person. We feel deeply connected with our dog. And then when we get a visitor, the dog is shuffled aside a little bit. We don't connect so deeply anymore. We don't snuggle and huggle and buggle the dog so much anymore. Because it's a little bit shameful to have such an intimate relationship with a dog. Strange. Don't do that. So we are afraid. And that's not only with dogs, but it's so often when we have a deep connection with somebody or a deep intimate relationship with somebody that we shield this a little bit. We hold this a little bit back. We don't show it. When there's others, there's kind of a little bit of a separation. It's not really allowed. And that's interesting. It's interesting because, why is that not allowed? Why is it difficult to show? What could that be? Why is it, when a couple is visiting, which, when they're sitting alone at home, there is this kind of connection, it is intimacy going on, and there is a kind of togetherness. When they visit, one of the couple has to humiliate all the time the other one. It's like a struggle. Little kind of quarrel going on all the time. Or when a visitor is arriving. No, it was not like this. It was like this and this and this. And you always, and you think and no, and this struggles, we know them. It's like the intimacy, that the connection which is there cannot be in social life. Why? So when we are lonely, it's so often when we are isolated that we hope that the environment will kind of, see us, will reach out. Because it's so difficult to reach out ourselves. It's so difficult, to move through this bubble of isolation and to connect. So we hope that others will connect. Or another pattern is that we try never to be alone, because alone becomes lonely. So we need the connection all the time. And this is something we see more and more and more. It's difficult to be alone. So you need to be connected. And then, happily, there is always a connection there. The Wi-Fi connection. So we walk with our phone in the forest. And we are connected to a lecture, to music. We are connected to our mother-in-law, to our brother, to a friend. And we talk. We walk with our phone on the street and we are connected. We're busy, connected to something. We're not connected to what's happening around ourselves so much. And so often, when you see people walking with their phone and somebody else, there's kind of, this look, don't disturb me, I'm on my phone. Almost an animosity. No connection. Don't you dare connect to me. I'm connected through the Wi-Fi. Not a moment of being alone. Not a moment to sink into the here and now. To let go of all connection. And maybe move through the emptiness which is coming forward when there is no connection, with, of course, the danger that you will fall in loneliness. But this falling through loneliness brings us into a deeper level of connection. Not a connection which is there not to feel loneliness, but a more deep, unconditional connection. Connection with yourself. Because this layer of loneliness, which is in all of us, is not so much connected with the environment. It's not so much connected with others. It's not so much to do with the world around yourself. But it's a deep pain, a deep sense of separation, which is coming forward because of the separation between us and ourselves, us and our own essence. Us and the deeper connection which is possible, where essence is connecting with essence, where connection becomes unconditional, where we can be alone and still connected with everything around ourselves. Where connection is free. So the more we run and the more we kind of hold on to not feel our loneliness, the more difficult it is to be alone. The more we have to be busy all the time, have to be connected with something all the time, either a book or a movie or a YouTube thing or WhatsApp messages or Facebook. When it is there, not to feel the loneliness, it will separate us more. It will separate us more from ourselves. The more lonely, in the end, we become. And then there is this miracle things, because, basically, when you look from that place, this lonely place, we live in a very lonely world with a lot of very lonely people. People on their phones, people not connected with themselves, nor connected with the moment, with the here and now. Not really there, half there, quarter there, 1/10 there. Not welcoming, not open. Just enough there not to bump into you. Lonely. So if we are able to feel the loneliness in the other person and to feel our loneliness as well, it's so much the same. Immediately a bridge is built. And then the loneliness of the other person and the third person, to experience the loneliness of all of us. The deep sense of isolation. Makes us aware that we're so deeply bound together into this suffering of loneliness. And again, like any rupture, any trauma, because loneliness is a rupture. It's a rupture in our whole connectivity with ourselves and with the world around ourselves. Any rupture can be healed by feeling, experiencing the content of the rupture. That slowly closes the rupture. The rupture is there because there is something in our psyche, inside ourselves, we don't want to feel, which is too difficult. But then the rupture of loneliness is really interesting when you move deeply into it. Because it's a collective rupture. It's a rupture through the collective psyche as well. It's like cracks in the whole build-up of the collective energy. And you can move through these cracks, connect through the cracks. And we are moving through the cracks, and we are connected to the cracks. In the end, we are much more deeply connected in the whole experience of loneliness as any other experience. It's one of the deepest sufferings of mankind. And by acknowledging it, giving it space, it can bring us more together as anything else.